The question, my reaction is not unlike Chief Demke. The actions of officers that potentially and did in many cases have an impact on public safety in York Region. Quite clear, those actions are reprehensible. But our commitment is to make sure that we continue this investigation, and where there's any others that may be responsible for this type of activity, to root it out. Our collective commitment is to continue this investigation, and as the chief mentioned, leave no stone unturned. So, I'm disappointed, like Chief Demke is, but I think we need to be very clear here. Not unlike the Toronto Police, York Region Police has almost 3,000 members who go out each and every day and do a fantastic job in our community. The actions of a few should not be representative of the actions of many of our people who work really hard each and every day to uphold the trust our communities have in us, and we'll continue to do what we can to make sure they have the support and that the communities are well informed along the way, and we do everything we can to minimize risk in our community.
It must be shocking for them to learn. My follow-up is for Chief Demke. Can you go over, of the 7, they've all been suspended. Have any been suspended without pay already?
Thank you for that. At the present moment, we are seeking suspension without pay for 4 of them. But I will tell you that as the releases and the conditions of the releases are made available to our investigators this morning, we are examining the legal authorities I have in regards to suspension without pay, so there may be more info to follow. But presently, at least 4 of the 7, I will be seeking suspension without pay.
And
David with City News. This is probably a question best directed to Chief McSween. The victim who's being described as, or the would-be victim of the home invasion, that unit commander of the Toronto South Detention Center, are we viewing that individual as completely innocent in all of this? Or is there any connection with some of the crime here, or is this individual, are we viewing them as completely innocent?
I think I'll take this question on behalf of Chief McSween. I just want to make sure I understand your question. I just beginning of it, filling off it. Was the question specifically about the victim of that incident, and what was the specific question again?
Right. The specific question is sometimes people can get caught up because they are involved in organized crime, and sometimes somebody can refuse to participate and finds himself a victim. Is there one direction we're leaning in here for this particular individual?
I would say that there is absolutely no evidence or information to suggest that the victim of that incident is in any way, shape, or form connected to organized crime whatsoever. Our belief is that that member was doing his job effectively, was ethical, and had complete integrity in his position, and that those actions, his commitment to integrity in his position, was what spawned the criminal actions against him.
And to follow up, can you tell us what triggered the investigation in the first place? What was it that brought your attention to the fact that something was wrong?
Yes, so with regard to the first incident that spawned the investigation, it was the attack on the corrections management member that you have referenced. That was the genesis for the investigation, and it was in short order following that incident and the 2 incidents that followed over 36 hours that our investigators uncovered the actions of Constable Barnhart. Those actions were the unlawful access and subsequent distribution of personal information relating to that member. That was the genesis of the investigation and how it began.
Thank you.
I have to put the phone down, my hand got tired.
Warmington from
But I'm still recording.
And Post Media. Question first for Chief McSween. The deputy has said it that this started with the discovery of Constable Barnhart as a Toronto police officer. And I want to know why you would call the chief of Toronto Police on that when it was your investigation. The minute you call the chief of Toronto Police, now he's in a position where he's got a conflict of interest. And the second part would be to Chief Demke. Why did you not refer this to be investigated outside of the police service. You had 30 police officers from Toronto Police, including professional standards, investigating your own service on something as serious as a police officer having his house shot up. I think it's a fair question. I know it's a complicated matter, but as you sit here and listen to it, it's police investigating police, and it's all in-house. And so how does the public know? And more importantly, perhaps, the officers that are contacting all the media people that are very, very upset about this, they want to know that as well. So it's probably for both chiefs.
Well, let me start. It was imperative for the chief of Toronto Police to know immediately what we had uncovered about one of his members. And also because we needed the cooperation and the support of the Toronto Police Service to do some of the work inside to help us with the investigation. I can appreciate your question, but I have full confidence in our professional standards bureau who work hand in hand with one another to do this very difficult work, but necessary work. So that's why I called Chief Demkew immediately. And as was said here today, and I will reiterate, we had been lock and step with each other on this investigation, standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure every investigative avenue and resource that was required was committed to this investigation, and will continue to do that beyond today. Chief?
Yeah, thank you, Chief, and Joe, thank you for that question. I think it's a very important one that we unpack for people watching and listening. The Community Safety and Policing Act does have a regulatory framework around conflict of interest, and we adhere to that. In fact, this investigation was led by the York Regional Police. I was not provided an opportunity to make investigative decisions, impact the speed and flow of the investigation. None of those considerations came to me and my lawyer as the chief of the Toronto Police. That was solely in the hands of the York Regional Police Service. What we did commit to do is maintain the integrity of the investigation and ensure that the York Regional Police had every resource they need, that we could follow every single lead, and make sure that we address every concern that was investigatively uncovered. And I committed to the chief, and we very expressly talked about there can be no stone left unturned in this investigation. And I committed to provide resources in a way that maintained the integrity of the investigation, but an investigation led by the York Regional Police Service, not by the Toronto Police Service.
Okay, just a quick follow-up on it, very, very quick. One of the words, I'm going to ask it. The second question is, one of the police officers, we understand, was arrested while on duty or on paid duty. Can you comment on that, even the deputy?
I think in regard to confirming that incident happened, it has been reported that did occur. I will say that, yes, a Toronto police officer was arrested yesterday in that capacity, but it was not related to the actions of the officer yesterday. It was related to the overarching case that we have spoken about.
Alicia Sall, CBC News. What can you tell us about alleged links to the towing industry? We have our sources telling us that some of these officers were allegedly involved in some of the violence we've seen there.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the question. In regards to the tow industry, we have heard this from sources in the media as well, with some reporting last evening. I can tell you that in regard to the tow industry more broadly, you'll have seen a lot of work happen with the tow industry in recent years. In regard to this specific investigation of Project South, Mr. Elwin Satanowski does have an affiliation to the tow industry. In regard to one of the shootings that you would have seen on the screen, it did occur at a commercial complex with an affiliation to a tow industry, and in fact, a tow truck was seen in that video. More broadly, however, I cannot speak to motives behind shootings and whether the shootings themselves were a direct motive in the tow industry. In fact, some of the shootings that occurred, in fact, right here in York Region, I'm confident in saying that did not have any connection to the tow industry, and in fact, people that were residing in those homes had no connection to the tow industry in some cases.
And our sources were also suggesting that perhaps this is larger and involves maybe some other jurisdictions. Do you confirm that is possible?
What I can tell you is this investigation is ongoing and will continue for some time. The people that we have sufficient grounds to lay charges on in this investigation have been reported on today and are in the packages that were provided today. As the investigation continues and we continue to examine relationships between the arrested police officers, the retired member, and other factions of organized crime that have been arrested, we may uncover further information. And as the chief has committed to, we are committed to leaving no stone unturned. And if and when we do have investigations into other police officers that result in criminal charges, we will be bringing that forward in subsequent releases of information.
Abby O'Brien from the Toronto Star. You mentioned that one of the individuals arrested is connected to a criminal network and has significant international ties. Can you elaborate on those international ties?
What I can speak about with regard to specifically, you're referring to Mr. Brian DaCosta. We are continuing to investigate Mr. DaCosta and his network. As I mentioned, there's a significant tie to drug trafficking. And with regard to drug trafficking, our allegation is that Mr. DaCosta was involved in the outbound exportation of illicit cannabis outside of Canada to a European location. The European location I will not speak of further as the investigation remains ongoing. And in addition, a pound of fentanyl, a significant volume of fentanyl that is outbound. Those connections, by the very nature of the destination, provide us with a framework at the outset for the international framework that is at play, and we continue to investigate that thoroughly with regard to Mr. DaCosta.
And this is for Chief Demke. Going forward, what steps can Toronto Police take to assure the public that their officers are not able to sell personal information to the highest bidders for
Yeah, I missed the back end of that question, please, can you repeat that?
I said, what steps will the Toronto Police take to assure the public that their officers are not able to sell personal information to the highest bidders or a hitman?
Well, that's a very important conversation that needs to be had. I think what's important in this particular set of circumstances is to recognize that while technology is evolving, the speed of technology and our use of data is evolving. In this case, the audit trail available actually worked. And when there was a need to examine a particular use of the records, we were able to identify who the officer was and advance the investigation very rapidly. So the technology that we use does have the ability for us to scrutinize how members are using that data, and that is something we do as a matter of our investigative processes. Additionally, one of the things that we're asking the Inspector General actually to look at, independent of us, is exactly the issue of access and control of information in databases. So this is an opportunity now that the investigation is out in the light for us to take a look at our internal systems, but also to bring in some independent inspection and oversight to give us a better understanding of what can be done in that regard to ensure that we're best in class in controlling the information that we need to connect to them.
Thank you. Michelle Fong, PDP News. How many investigations have been undermined by these accused officers?
Sorry, was your question how could or?
How many investigations have been undermined by these accused officers?
When you say undermined by the
Okay, don't play games, okay? You know. Come on. You're a good cop. You're a good cop.
Or any other ongoing investigations?
You don't dodge the question. Don't dodge the question. People are watching you.
Charges related to that information about ongoing investigations.
Is that Chief Jim?
By these officers.
Or I'm sorry.
However, and with regard to the second.
I'm sorry. I didn't watch it. I was listening.
Here about looking at cases that they may have been involved with in the past. There is a retroactive inspection of cases that will occur for all of the involved officers to see what their roles were in those cases and to what impact their involvement in cases may have jeopardized cases in the past, present, or future court proceedings. At this point, we do not have any cases to report on that would fit into that scheme.
And my follow-up, some of
I think he's lying.
of alleged drug kingpin Ryan Wedding are held.
He dodged the question 3 times.
Can you confirm the conspiracy to commit murder is linked to the wedding case?
No, I cannot confirm that.
Hi, Patrick White from the Globe and Mail. It sounds like with 7 officers arrested, that must have been some kind of systematic recruitment of officers in the GTA going on. Can you shed any light on how these officers were, in some ways, recruited by organized crime?
As we continue to investigate and look both again retroactively, we continue to examination the relationships of the officers and how they connected to organized crime figures. Part of that is the investigation that is ongoing. I do not have any definitive information to date that I can share with you about how these officers came to know, for example, Mr. DaCosta or Mr. Pifford. As the investigation unfolds, we may become more clear on how that relationship formed.
Thank you. And we know about the TPS officers. How can we be sure that this hasn't spread with so much interoperability between forces in the GTA that this hasn't spread to other forces, including York Regional Police?
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. As both Chief Demke and Chief McSween mentioned earlier, organized crime is an insidious, action that takes place in many institutions, including policing. We are certainly alive to and aware that that can affect multiple institutions and other policing services. At this time, our investigation remains ongoing. We are committed to looking at all avenues in terms of the relationships of the arrested officers, the retired member, and other avenues of organized crime and their relationships. And if we encounter these, we will follow them to the end of the road to uncover any other police officers in any other services where criminal actions have occurred.
You just referred to the insidious nature of organized crime, and we heard that word used many times, and how organized crime can infiltrate communities, in this case, police services. I guess what I'd like to know, and I think what Torontonians, people in New York Region would like to know, is how does that happen within police? Police are highly trained individuals. You have sergeants on that list who are arrested, constables. How does that turn happen? What is the motivation? Is it money?
Well, I'll start the answer to that question. Listen, we're big organizations and hire from the human race. And we have incredible controls, incredible systems, incredible training. And importantly, in this case, to recognize that when something did go wrong, we found it and we were able to tackle it, and we were able to put people before the courts where they belong. But this, any element of organized crime infiltration in policing is absolutely unacceptable and requires our complete commitment to root out and address. But I think it's also important to recognize that over 8,000 people serve with integrity and courage every day in Toronto, and many thousands more across the province of Ontario. So people need to understand that we are, as police leaders, here at this table and across the sector, committed to doing everything we need to do to address and root out the impact of organized crime in our communities, anywhere, including in policing.
Now, I'll just add to it. Chief Demke is quite right. I mean, the many police officers I mentioned, over 30,000 police officers show up every day doing the right thing, making the right decisions. Yet, but for a few here today that we're talking about who are not upholding their oath, and that now has an impact on the trust and confidence people may have in our institution, in the institution of policing. But I think my message to York Region residents is that the fact that you have 2 chiefs here today and a deputy chief who are being fully transparent about this investigation and the integrity and the dedication and commitment we have had throughout from day one to root this out and and I will reinforce call on the Inspector General for that review and inspection. I support that. Our residents deserve that, and our members deserve that. I suspect as that unfolds in the coming weeks, months, and
before you go to your next question, you will get the Inspector General letter today. Manager is identified as being that the candidates who are joining the police services, but it's important that we are recognizing, to the heart of your question, we need to do everything we can to address this.
Chief Demke, is this the largest case of corruption in the history of the Toronto Police Service?
It's there's a lot of subjectivity in assessing that kind of question. I'll say, in my time as chief, certainly the most concerning and most significant professional standards internal affairs matter. And in my over 35 years as a police officer in the city of Toronto, certainly of an incredible magnitude and incredible seriousness.
Hi, Chiefs. Beatrice Baseman, CP24. My sources have told me that these officers involved are from 11 Division, 12 Division, and guns and gangs. These are 3 different units, including a specialized unit where this officer was part of a unit where they weed out the bad guys, those most violent in our society. Is there a reason officers from those particular divisions and units were kind of recruited to be a part of this? And how do you make sure the safeguards are in place if there's no more rotten apples in those divisions specifically?
You want to start?
Yes, thank you, Chief. Thank you for the question. I'll start with that. With regard to the officers, they were from a number of different divisions. As we came to investigate, in particular, Constable Barnhart, which was the genesis of the investigation, our information led us to believe that it was relationships that Constable Barnhart had with other officers, and to what extent those relationships go in the past. I do not have significant information on that. But instead of framing it as individual divisions, I would frame it more as relationships amongst individual police officers, connected specifically to Constable Barnhart at the genesis of this investigation.
And I think I'll just follow up. The charges we're discussing today are criminal in nature. There's obviously a lot more work going on. But the units that have been impacted that are here as part of the criminal allegations, it's 12 Division, 23, 11, and 52. And one inactive member who was previously assigned or was a member of the Emergency Management Unit.
Chief, I understand that there's been reports there was an emergency board meeting. Has anyone from the Toronto Police Services Board or the mayor called for your resignation? And why should the people of Toronto still have confidence in you as the chief of police?
Your first question, no. Secondly, right now my job is very much focused on dealing with the immediate aftermath of this investigation. And as you've heard, the investigation continues. And I will continue to lead the Toronto Police in supporting this very important work and continuing our commitment to work with the York Regional Police Service to leave no stone unturned. We are now at the point where we will do our work looking inwardly to ensure that everything we can do is done to address the issues that have been identified in this investigation. Thirdly, I have asked for and written to the Inspector General of Policing for an independent review of 5 key areas of concern, and we will cooperate with that Inspector General. And finally, I'd ask everybody in Toronto to recognize that our members do incredible work, and I will continue to lead the Toronto Police Service members who work day in and day out with great courage and integrity, serving the city of Toronto and beyond.
That will conclude today's press conference. Thank you very much for attending.